G'day, Cam Wurf here. You're listening to the Physical Performance Show. Enjoy.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to episode 310 of the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by Polar's world-leading GPS multi-sport and running watches and their heart rate monitors. I'm Brad Beer, sports and exercise physiotherapist by trade and training, and founder of Pogo Physio. Each week we'll bring you the latest and greatest information and inspiration designed to help you perform at your physical best. And of course, we do this across a range of our different episodes: interest editions, coaches' corners, catch-up episodes, expert editions, and of course, featured performers. Now, we've just come off the back of our summer series, 4-part, full of learnings, getting you ready for 2020. Featuring Dr. Stephen Seiler, Dr. Shona Halson, Rinny McGregor, and various guests who last week instructed us how to navigate common endurance-related injuries. And the team's fresh back from the January break at the headquarters for the Physical Performance Show, ready to bring you some wonderful highs, lows, and learnings from one of endurance sport's truly great characters on this episode, Cam Wurf. And I recently caught up with Cam at the start of 2022 to look ahead at what he has planned for this calendar year. To many, Cam Wurf needs very little introduction, but by formality and by way of introduction, Cam Wurf's bio is exemplary. He's been referred to as one of the world's greatest endurance athletes. You see, Cam has spent way more than half of his life in elite sport across 3 sports: rowing, triathlon, and professional cycling. It all started for Cam with his first passion of rowing, winning the national schoolboy sculling crown at the 2001 Australian Rowing Championships. Cam from there progressed to the junior and then the under-23 national teams, being part of the World Championship, winning Lightweight Coxless Four at the 2013 World Rowing Under-23 Championships. 12 months later, Cam represented Australia at the Athens 2004 Olympic Games in the lightweight men's double scull. But Cam's rowing career came to an end in 2006 when he shifted his focus to professional cycling. In 2011, World Cycling Pro Team Cannondale picked up Cam, and Cam experienced 2 of the World Grand Tours, the Giro d'Italia and the Volta Spania, in the Cannondale team colours. Cam also spent time racing for Team Liquigas and Team Lotto, both world-leading teams in the professional cycling peloton at the time. Then in 2015, Cam turned his attention to Ironman Triathlon, turning pro in 2016 and going on to set the Ironman World Championship bike course record at Kona in 2018. Cam worked diligently on his run leg the following year to finish 5th place at the 2019 Ironman World Triathlon Championships. But then in 2020, Cam was pulled back into the World Professional Cycling peloton when he donned the Team Ineos Grenadiers colours to fill a vacant roster spot, instantly impressing Team Ineos with his performances and work ethic. Cam has since rode 2 world tours with Team Ineos Grenadiers, the Djaro, and also the Volta Spania. Looking ahead, Cam has his eyes firmly set on the Ironman Triathlon World Championship title, and given his pedigree, we must all watch this space. So get set for a fun interview with Australia's Cam Wurf. He is a character, but underneath Cam the entertainer, there are some great learnings to be had. Here is my conversation with Cam Wurf. Cam Wurf, welcome to the Physical Performance Show.
Thanks, Brad. I wanted to finally make it. Obviously realised it's been a little while trying to both get online at the same time. You'd think in the last couple of years we would have been able to figure it out a lot sooner when we've had no other option as far as communication go. But anyway, better late than never.
Mate, well, you are worth waiting for. Cam, as per your bio, there's, and Pat Yonker, Australian cycling legend, if you like, has labelled you perhaps the greatest endurance athlete on the planet. It's a big rap, but in terms of your accolades, your bio, there's not much that you haven't done, from obviously elite rowing, Olympic Games representation for Australia, over to the professional peloton cycling, and now at the pointy end of World Ironman Triathlon. It's been quite the journey. I know you've lived it many times, but can you just take us back to where your interest in sport even started and why it was even birthed?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up as a kid, all small towns. I was born in Tasmania. My mum and I moved to Port Macquarie when I was 2, which was the reason I went back to Australia in 2019 and did the Ironman there. Obviously, since I got into the sport, going back and doing, I learned to ride a bike there. I started swimming there. I used to do a little athletics there. I mean, as everyone knows, I didn't actually do the sport of triathlon when I was a kid, but I certainly did all the sports, and obviously having done them all for the first time in Port Macquarie, that was quite a special one, especially having mum there, and I think it was pretty close to Mother's Day and all that. So so that was sort of where my nippers had a motorbike, soccer, rugby league, golf. Yeah, probably there was some other sports too. That was actually my first exposure to rowing. I think I was about 5 or 6, and my mum went rowing. One of her work colleagues was into rowing, and my grandfathers had been top level rowers for Tasmania. Yeah, back in the Stone Age, and so mum went out rowing one day. I remember being on the bank of my bike, sort of following her and one of her work colleagues up and down the river, and being pretty fascinated by it all. But it wasn't for another 6 years when I actually moved back to Tasmania, I got into rowing for the first time. But in between then, I grew up we moved to Lord Howe Island when I was 7 or 8. I finished primary school there, so around 4 years there. And an island of, what was it, 10K long and 1 kilometre wide, and 300 people and 30 kids at the school. You don't really have the luxury of being a specialist in any sport. You need to fill the team for every sport there possibly is. If we're playing football, we're playing soccer, we're playing golf, frisbee, baseball, whatever, tennis. You obviously got into everything, and just I guess maybe naturally being a competitive kid, you start watching TV and watching the highest level of sports and following all the heroes. Greg Norman, obviously in golf, Greg Welsh in triathlon at the time. And I guess the whole thing for Ironman was born because there was actually an event out on Lord Howe Island at that time. It was like a battle between the Ironman surf boys and the Ironman triathletes really. But Welshie was there, and it was after he'd won in 93. Or 94, whichever year it was. And I actually got his singlet. I actually got his racing singlet from that event. I've still got it at home. That was, when my, sort of really, I'd followed triathlon for whatever reason. And as a kid, you follow every sport. But, actually meeting him and I guess he was like the first big sports star that, I met, in person. I guess that was probably where the real seed for, or the passion for one day wanting to do Kona came in, and, here we are all these years later. So I think, it was just growing up in those small towns and being exposed to every sport, being a, naturally competitive kid and just a fan of sport, and naturally dreamed of being at the top of every sport on the planet. And felt that one day maybe I could combine at least 2 of them and compete at the highest level in 2 different sports. So that was sort of always a goal growing up. And here we are.
I met Greg Welsh in Coffs Harbour for the Tooheys Blue Triathlon Series launch, and he signed my hat. I had a green hat with Brad Bevan and Greg Welsh's signature. So we were both inspired. And I think I had Greg on my school book. The cover for my Year 9 English class book cover was Greg crossing the line in Hawaii. So, I mean, there's been such a great lineage of Australian endurance sporting stars. But I think we can't gloss over you on Lord Howe Island. For those that aren't familiar with, Lord Howe Island, it is tiny. It's a holiday destination. You don't tend to think of it as a place to grow up. And I heard you, in preparing for today, speaking on a podcast where you mentioned that one of your classmates was episode 266 guest of the show, none other than Tim Reed, 70.3 Ironman world champion, 2016, 17. And so
16 it was, I think.
2016 on the Sunshine Coast. What's the chances of that, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, the first triathlon I ever did, obviously, was on Lord Howe. They have a local one around Christmas time, probably around now, probably 30 years ago. I think about it. And Tim was my big rival. And, I've obviously told the story a few times, but, we swam together as we tend to all still do. And then the bike, I got away from him, but then my bike spattered on a chain came off down a descent, and I couldn't get it back on, and obviously backpedaled and twisted it all around everything else. So it really wasn't going anywhere. There's resort, it's the only way of transport pretty much on the island is bikes. And so I went past one of the guest houses. I knew, they had a bike rack pretty close to the road, and ditched my bike and grabbed one out of the rack and finished it. I remember coming onto the road with just as Tim was catching me and chasing him down, and it was a lady's bike, so the big step-through frame and a basket on the front, looking across at me thinking, what is going on here? You weren't on that before. And, we started the run together, and, I just remember that awkward, horrible-looking waddle like a duck style that he still possesses today, and obviously it's been extremely effective for him. But being so humiliated that a guy that looks like that was running away from me, and he beat me. And so that was probably both of our first ever triathlon. And fortunately since then I've got the better of the battles. So
hello Tim Reed.
Yeah.
The rowing trajectory, I mean, it continued right through to the highest levels, World Juniors, Olympic Games, outings. How do you reflect now as a professional cyclist and Ironman triathlete on your rowing days? I mean, what did you learn from the rigours of rowing? I mean, can you get more lactate on any piece of equipment than a rowing erg?
No, it's funny. Just at a team camp in Mallorca, and we've got a lot of young guys. If you've noticed in cycling, the big push towards recruiting the younger riders now. And they're all there doing lactate tests, etc. And they're like, "Where are you coming to do the lactate tests?" And I was like, "No, guys." I said, I did my first lactate test before you guys were born. I'm pretty up to date with how my lactate is now, and I know what it feels like when I'm at certain power zones. But they'd always they asked me, actually this question, and what was it like in the different sports? And I remember in rowing, at Lake Burley Griffin, we'd go out there, and this is during period qualifying for the Olympics in 2004, and we had a pretty strong squad there. We used to do this session. It was 10 times 1 minute on, 1 minute off. We do it 3 times, and in between each block we'd check our lactate. I remember getting to 22 by the third one. It was. I've certainly produced some lactate in certainly more so than any other, than what I ever did in cycling when I did some testing and I haven't actually done any in triathlon. But I guess it would be interesting to check it in running, because I think running you could certainly hurt yourself. I'm off to Portland in a few weeks, so up with the night guys. So maybe I'll trust them to stick a pin in my finger and see what the blood lactate levels are again. Might be actually interesting. But tonight I got back in the gym. We've been planning, the year and where we can keep improving. And obviously coming into the sport of Ironman Triathlon without a background in the sport, it takes a lot of work to get to the point where you can run and swim competitively with these guys. Fortunately, I guess, I'm reasonably competitive on the bike already. But so we could afford to focus, firstly probably more on the running, and now, looking at the swimming. But a bit of an opportunity we see now to improve is actually strength. And that was something that we hadn't worried about because I'd done so much of it in rowing. I mean, I was in the gym often 5 days a week, 1 or 2 hours. And, but jumping in the squat rack tonight, I nearly cried when I had to have just a bar on my shoulders. It had been 15 years since I picked up a barbell. But it felt bloody good, I'll tell you that, to feel that burn, from those days of rowing, that every session was just hard. It was just, if it was there was no easy minutes in rowing, and you're always in that group environment. So there's always that competitiveness. And I guess alluding to, what I was saying, where I grew up in small towns and, being in every sport, and you just dream big, in everything. And so, in rowing, when you're in that environment, actually everything you want to be the best at absolutely everything. So that just basically meant suffering every single session. So, I think in endurance sport, there's definitely a tendency to get used to or accepting that it's not meant to be hard, because you're meant to be able to go for a long time. So you got to be a bit careful, which I think is true. You have to build a big foundation. But, I'm 38 years old now, and I've been doing, sport my whole life. And I think I've got a pretty good foundation, and we feel like it might be a good opportunity to go back and, revisit the younger years, I guess, a bit to keep improving, as I do get older, because, as I said, the last number of years has been spent, really just building the foundation on the running more so, and I guess a bit the swimming, and now seeing what we can do to get the top end speed, because of course the sport's continually moving along, and you want to stay at the pointy end of it. So rowing, I think I always say, people say, oh, what was your favorite sport? And I always say rowing, because it gave me the foundation to do everything I've done since. And that's not even just in sport, but in life in general. I think the classic example of the Olympic, explaining to someone how like any selection trial, but of course for me the Olympic trials was the really big one. You had three doubles sculls each other, and you rotated through, and I won basically every race, and having to get the most out of the other guys, knowing that you all sort of had a vested interest in getting yourself on the team. But so learning how to work with people that maybe necessarily didn't want to help you, but you had to somehow convince them that it was in their best interest to work with you. And, skills like that, because at the end of the day, you got to get the result. You got to figure out how to succeed together. And, so there's a lot of skills in rowing that I've certainly never come across in any other sport. So I really am grateful for the foundation I had in that.
Some similarities to, I guess, the professional peloton with the teamwork involved, yet there's individual aspirations amongst the team. And
the difference is in cycling, there's a big hierarchy. You got the guys that win everything that, they're the big stars and they're going to be the big star, and you get paid quite well for your job without having the pressure of being the big star, of having to actually win, so you kind of there's money involved, and it's very different to rowing, where you're basically all just a bunch of blokes in a suit, and and the accolades are equal for everyone. There's no one that is going to be better off with the success than any other person. So of course everyone wants it. It's not like you can pay someone off or do anything like that. It's once in a lifetime opportunities. And as I said, there's certainly definitely nothing else in life that has taught me those lessons better than, the sport of rowing, and, discipline, dedication, you guys in a crew that are relying on you to be there. If I don't turn up in Andorra, we've got 14 guys living there, and we, I guess part of my role on the team is sort of keeping the group together as much as possible. And, often we're all, if we're all in town, we're all there to meet at, the Repsol service station, 10 o'clock in the morning, and we go out and train together. And, but if someone doesn't turn up, we still go, and it doesn't really affect anything. Whereas if rowing, if you don't turn up, the whole crew can't get on the water. And, there's, it's a wonderful sport. And, any parent that asks me whether, a kid should get involved, I always say, as long as you don't mind, not sleeping much anymore and getting out of bed early, then it's definitely a wonderful sport, foundation for your kids.
I grew up in Grafton, New South Wales. It was a big rowing town, but the irony is I was too busy with triathlon.
Well, probably a similar time schedule anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Cam, you realise there's going to be a few local hitters rocking up at the Repsol service station 10 a.m. in Andorra now. We certainly noticed there's quite a few people that even just ride past around that time to spot and see who they see. Obviously, we've got some pretty big stars in our team, so no, that's cool. Cam, the transition out of the boat, I think it was circa 2006, your last row, into the professional cycling peloton. I know you competed in the Australian National Cycling Championships, the time trial, finished 4th. not on that woman's bike from Lord Howe Island. You'd had an upgrade by then.
No. Yeah.
But how did that actually eventuate? How were you welcomed into such a selective, competitive world?
Yeah, it was interesting because I got tendonitis. The first time I'd ever been injured, I got tendonitis in my wrist. And yeah, it was a bit of we had a coach, an Italian coach that, was a hard man, and he was in a bad mood one day, and he stuck us in the boat. We just got these new boats, these Italian boats, Filippi, beautiful boats, and I could tell straight away my rigging was wrong, and I said something, and he was, as I said, he wasn't in a good mood, and he said, "Oh, shut up, there's nothing wrong with you, get on with it." And of course, me, stubbornly, pretty good at dealing with pain, just put up with it. And it really blew my wrist out quite badly. And it was like, everyone was, it's just tendonitis, it'll go away. And, but yeah, it didn't. I knew it was bad, and it didn't go away. And in the end, after a few weeks of trying to treat it in Europe, they sent me back to Australia. One of the surgeons there was an expert in carpal tunnel, so just with the cricketers and so forth, have a lot of it, particularly the wicket keepers and soccer goalkeepers, etc., from such an extreme sort of hyperextension of the wrist. And they sliced it open, and had some rest, and was able to manage to get myself back for the World Championships. But during that sort of 6 weeks of recovery, it was on the bike and running flat out, and because I couldn't row. And I had to do a test pretty much as soon as because they didn't want to put me back in the team for Worlds. I had to do a test basically the day I, was allowed to row again. And I was still one of the strongest in the group. I think just mind over matter more than anything. So they let me do Worlds, and we'd sailed through qualification and the semis. And sadly, about 200 meters to go, leading the final, it blew out again, and we ended up fourth. So I didn't feel too good about that, more letting my partner down. We were obviously, looking at Beijing, and, we'd been smashed in Athens, and wanting to, come back and do better. And, we were still fourth, which was quite a good result, but I needed a big rake now to repair my wrist properly. And of course, I just got back on the bike during that few months that I had to have off. And at the end of that period was the national championships. And then the week later, I was due to go back to Canberra to start rowing again. And I went to the nationals, was fourth in the TT, and the national team, just the head coach at the time, Shane Bannon, he said, "Listen, you ever thought about changing sports?" And I was getting towards the end of my economics and finance degree, and was starting to look for jobs, and knew that cycling was a little bit more lucrative, certainly rowing, and probably a bit more desirable than working at a local wealth management office in Hobart, Tasmania. And said, "Why not? Let's give it a go." And if the national team was prepared to support me, and that was it. They threw me in, and in the first year, I was actually on I made the national team. So I went, within 12 months, I'd raced at the elite level in rowing at the World Championships. And then 12 months later, I lined up in the TT. I remember I went ninth off from the back, and I had David Miller behind me, and sort of went back through all the biggest names in the sport to Fabian Cancellara. And I remember the top section of the course, we sort of went out and up over a motorway bridge and back across and back down. And I was just sort of at the start of the wave, and I was just coming back off that section as Cancellara was entering, and just thinking, holy crap, like literally the 8 best time trials in the world, and then me were in this section of road at the same time. And it was a bit of a spin out, but I'd set my target to do that in my first year. I felt if I'm going to change sports, there's no point doing it unless I can be at the same level, at the highest level of this sport. I may as well go back to rowing. So it was make or break. I managed to, make the team, and, obviously start to talk to some bigger teams about potentially turning professional. And that was enough to, keep me, the dangle the carrot to keep going. And that's what ended up happening.
And then you found your way into, I believe it was Liquid Gas. Was that your first pro team?
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about, Cam? Obviously the promise was there, the signs were there, the talent was there, the ambition, the drive.
Yeah, it was interesting that actually, because the second year, so 07, 08, another year of the national system, and I got approached by Lotto and Liquid Gas during that year, 2008. I decided to go with Lotto because of Cadell, and yeah, for whatever reason, Cadell wasn't too happy about it. And I'd spoken to, the management there, and they were going to meet with me and Varese at the World Championships. This was sort of in August. They said, yeah, we'll deal with the contract. They made me the offer. It was certainly pretty amazing for me at that time, what they were offering, and enough for me to say no to Liquigas, and obviously excited to join Cadell. And then sort of 2 months later, they said, oh yeah, we'll meet you tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, Cadell, as I said, he wasn't super stoked about it. He felt I needed to earn it more or something. I'm not sure anyway. And the next day at 10 o'clock, they rang, oh no, we need a couple more hours. And I was waiting. Sure enough, 4 or 5 hours later, I rang Aldo Sassi, who was our coach at the time, and he'd sort of been dealing with all of this with me. And he said that, that's not right. And he rang them and called back, and he was pretty mad. And he rang Liquigas straight away. And of course they said, no, he can stick it up his jumper. He didn't want to ride with our team in the first place. He's not coming back to us now. And that was a bit of a kick in the teeth, to be honest. So, I had a couple more years in the lower division, and then finally went back to Liquigas, in 2011. And I guess enough time that they'd, felt that I'd learned my lesson for turning him down the first time, and got my shot. So that was cool.
How are things now with Cadell and yourself after that initial frost?
Yeah, it was funny because, at the time, Cadell was the reason I was working with Aldo. Cadell had been great. I mean, he'd been amazing to me. He'd taken me along to the Mapei Centre. I'd met him earlier that year at the Nationals. Told me I looked terrible on the bike. I'll organise a bike fitting for you. And he was really amazing. He took me there, introduced me to Aldo, as I said. Aldo started coaching me. I trained a bit with Cadell, so I don't really understand what sort of went on there. I remember him making a few comments about Matt Lloyd, who was the national champion at that time, about him being in the jersey and getting attention and whatever. I mean, I don't know. Cadell was just a bit different, but I mean, he's done so much for the sport, and I don't question what he did. And in the end, I mean, it hurt at the time, but it made me hungrier, to want to come back and not even to prove him wrong, but made me more to prove him that, prove to him that I was worthy of being in the top flight. And even, back in 2011 at that time, he did, there was probably the option to go to BMC as well. And he certainly wasn't standing in my way at that point. So we've always been great mates and, good friends. And even through that, as I said, he's a legend of the sport. And if he felt that it wasn't right, he was probably right, to be honest. He's just excited for him when he won the Tour, and he's been the shining light for all of us, and setting the standard to want to go to Europe and achieve and believe we can win on the biggest stage. And that sort of goes for me with Kona as well. Being exposed to someone like Cadell, and being able to go to Europe or go out of Australia and try and make it happen. So, we're good.
you touch on something really I'm curious about there, Cam, and that is you're exposed to Cadell. You've been exposed kind of wherever you've set foot seemingly in your sporting career, including starting back on Lord Howe Island with Tim Reed. You've always been surrounded by, the best in sport. You're an Ineos Grenadier now, formerly Team Sky, of course. You're about to go to LA, I think, to train probably with Geraint Thomas there, Tour de France winner. Chris Froome's one of your best buddies. What have you observed from, I guess, spending time around these people?
Yeah, well, you'd think I would have learned a lot, and I'd won a lot myself, wouldn't you? I guess what I've learned is there's all of them, there's very, people that are very orientated towards themselves, like it's all about themselves. But all those guys seem to, and even Cadell, with what happened with Lotto, as I said, it's not an issue between us at all, and even wasn't at the time. It was a learning experience, but their ability to take you along with you, with them, and sort of happy to see you grow as well. The relationship I brought to it was good work ethic. I'm a good trainer, and I guess I pushed them enough, yet they knew they could beat me. So you were never really a threat, but you kind of help them with their training. I trained a lot with Drew Ginn and James Tompkins, our crew in 04, and in theory, we should have been challenging for a medal, but we fell apart, when it came to the pressure of the Olympics, whereas obviously they went on and won, comfortably. But as far as, prognostic speed goes, we in theory should have been very, very good. And they're two guys from rowing that I still keep in touch with, really the only two. And that's not because it's James and Drew. It's because they're great friends and they've been great mentors to me. And they seem to have always believed in me and are pushing me still now to, really try and nail Kona and try and do better on the bike as well. And, reminding me you can do both sports. Like, don't settle into being okay at both of them and be happy that you're there. Like, figure out how to go out there and kick ass in both of them. And you're right. I mean, all through the sport, but I think just the fact that deep down, those guys are just normal guys. There's no act with them. They don't put up any sort of facade. They just work hard, really, really hard, and and are happy to be challenged by people, but also sort of take people along with them, which I think then elevates them to be even better, perhaps. I'm pretty fortunate by the company that I've kept, and they certainly have made me believe in myself. Particularly in this second act in sport more, as I've got older, and see if I can achieve some great things as well.
I think many people following your journey and story, Cam, find that mindset highly inspiring. That is, you've called it your second act in sport. And we see now that, yes, in the professional peloton, there's the younger generations that are certainly achieving things that they weren't several decades ago. But on the other end of the spectrum, you've got masters athletes plus 35 years of age doing incredible endurance feats in the world of sport. Your journey is one of those. The promise hasn't been fulfilled. The best is still out there. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be going, right?
Yeah, honestly. I mean, of course, you always look at your age and you think, oh, gosh, I should be slowing down. I shouldn't be getting better. But the reality is every year I feel like, well, I think I'm showing I'm improving. I think I have always trained hard. I don't think I've put in so that's something I've learnt with, Chris and G and James and Drew, Cadell, even Ivan Basso, and then now the Tom Pidcocks, the young guys coming through, Pavel Sivakov, that I've had a lot of time around. Of course, Richie Port, I could go on and go on. Tim Reed, but, they seem to sacrifice a lot more than I do. I tend to be a little bit too relaxed with it all. They seem to be a bit amazed by the type of work I can do and I can sustain, and I kind of just sort of brush it off and laugh it off. Whereas, particularly, diet and, sleep and, maybe, friends and, having fun and being social and doing those things, they're, much better at just, switching off and, being on the regime is a word they all use, to be honest. And I don't think that I've been very good at that over the years. I've sort of tried to prove that you can do it without that. And I think you can be quite good, but I don't think you can quite be at the top level. But I'll also never forget something Bradley Wiggins told me, back in 2013. He was trying to get me to go to Sky, at Team Sky at the time. And he said to me that don't bother trying to put 100% of yourself into sport until you've got everything, in place, especially as you get older. If you've got a wife, you've got kids, you've got, team sponsors, all that stuff. When all that is right in your life, you go 100%. You've probably got, 3 to 5 years, depending on your age and how much you've been doing to that point. And that's when you'll see your potential. And, it's been a bit of a process. I've started another sport and I'm also back in cycling now, and I've been doing that for a couple of years, but I kind of finally feel, I'm married now. We've got a little boy and we're very settled in Andorra, and, I've got a great support network around me with, obviously the crew at Nike and, the team and, my teammates and then obviously, some swimming coaches, Dennis Cottrell being one around the place as well. And I don't want for anything, I've got everything I want. There's nothing I could dream of that I want. I mean, I've got the crew around me and I'm ready to maybe get a bit more on the regime and really put in those extra few, bits. And And that's probably something that those guys have taught me that they do, and has been the difference between them and me. There's probably a lot more differences that I'll find out, but maybe that's the main one.
So look out, world. Cam Wurf is now on the regime. As you say, working with Dennis Cottrell, that's interesting. Obviously, most people would be familiar with Dennis Cottrell's coaching career. Grant Hackett being one, Sun Yang over time. But how did you connect with Dennis, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, that's another crazy one. I was up on the Gold Coast training with Froomey, up where, Mystery Road, up the territory you've been riding last. Yeah, I was there with him for very randomly. I was back in Australia. I wasn't even in sport at that point. I was getting ready to go back to the US and start working in a real estate hedge fund. And Tim just rang because Chris was there alone. He'd had a teammate with him, and he got called into Tour Down Under because one of the other guys had got appendicitis, Owain Doull. And the reality is, I wouldn't be here now. Well, I wouldn't be back in sport. None of this would have happened had this Owain Doull not got appendicitis. And Tim just randomly called me and said, what are you up to? And I said, just home for a couple of weeks. I'd known Tim since the rowing days. Back to the US to start work again. And he said, do you want to come up and train with Froomey for 10 days? He's got no one to ride with. And I was like, oh, yeah, why not? That sounds like a great way to sort of, maybe finish up your sporting career. And I went up and it went pretty well. It, probably proved that I probably had something to offer sport. And, they both sort of were like, well, what do you want to do? Are you interested in coming back to cycling? Do you want to, do something else? And I'd been telling Tim that I'd done a couple of triathlons, including an Ironman, in my year away, just sort of, for fun, because it's something I'd always wanted to do. And he felt that Ironman could be a sport that really suited me. So when we finished that little cycling block, Chris was heading off to the Sun Tour, and that afternoon, Tim took me down to Miami pool. And I know it's quite a controversial subject with Sun Yang, but, Dennis was down there coaching Sun Yang, and Tim said, can you teach Cameron to swim? So literally, I hadn't been to swim school since I was about 4. And my first swim squad, Sun Yang and all these training partners. And it was pretty funny because I remember spending most of the swim. I think I was there for about an hour and a half, and I think I spent an hour and a quarter in the gutter on the side of the pool, Dennis teaching me just feel the water. He wouldn't actually let me in the pool. So I think I got about 15 minutes of swimming done that day, and then went back the next day. I think got a bit more time in the pool, and eventually I built up to being able to actually jump in the pool at the start of the session. So, but since then, we've checked in with Dennis sort of every year, and obviously recently, there's been the issues there, so I haven't obviously had as much to do with him, but still keep in touch. And obviously, he's done amazing things for, swimming in Australia, and quite an icon, I mean, I think anyone that follows the sport, the images of him on pool deck, watching, Grant, succeed, something makes the hairs on your back of your neck stand up, and pretty amazing to be able to, I mean, back to what you said, I'm just so blessed with the people around me, and just got to pinch myself every day, to be honest, and that I get up and and go after it, go after the ambitions that we have.
Amazing, Cam. What a contrast. Sun Yang in his prime and Cam Wurf on the side of the pool with Dennis doing no doubt animated stroke examples for you.
And that morning I'd been on the bike with Chris Froome.
That's a charmed life. And this was what year was this, Cam?
This was 2017. Okay. So sort of when it all kind of began. Yeah, so about 4 years ago now.
I guess important for the listeners following the journey, you exited the cycling peloton for a bit of a hiatus, and this is your return, if you like. Yeah.
I had a couple of years completely out, and I was living in LA and having a good time. Eased back into it with triathlon for a few years, and then the end of 2019 was when Team Sky, well, it was Team Ineos then, asked me to go to the camp in Mallorca. It was more a case of just sort of integrating me more in with the team officially, even though the plan was to continue just focusing on Kona. I'd just been 5th in Kona and focus on that, and one of the guys on the team ended up with, a heart problem, and they had to basically pull him off the roster. And it was January. So normally you're not allowed to do that until sort of August. And they got special dispensation from the UCI to put me on because I was already part of the, the drug testing protocol with Ironman. So, normally you'd have to wait 6 months to be, eligible, for a new pro. And if someone's on another team, you have to deal with the transfer. So that was sort of without. So I was sort of just in the right place at the right time. I was actually in LA of all places. I was training with G, as you said, he'll be out in LA with me training for the month of January, but that started back in 2018. Obviously he went on to win the tour that year. So it's something we've tried to replicate each year. And then last year with COVID, he couldn't go, but Froomey was out there with me. I got him into the Red Bull Center to, work on his rehab, because that's like that's the main rehab center for the Red Bull athletes. So he did all, a lot of work on that last year there. I was with G in LA at the beginning of 2020 last year, and got a phone call to ask me if I wanted to get back into cycling, and I was like, yeah, why not? And I said, when do I start racing? He said, well, maybe we should start you ASAP so we can see where you're at. So I jumped on the plane, and incidentally, I went to Cadell's race. So and did that. That was my first race in 6 years, over 6 years. A bike race. So straight back into the world tour. And I remember, we started, it was windy, quite windy that day, and we turned left across tailwind, and Luke Roder said, right, Wurf, you've lighted up. And it had been that long since I'd raced, I'd forgotten which side of the road you go to for an echelon. I just picked a side. Luckily it was the right one, and put it in the gutter and did an almighty first turn. And next thing, the peloton was in 5 groups, and we were away, and we were back racing, and that was it. It was like I'd never been gone. Eventually the race would come back together quite a way down. And I remember Leo Viviani, one of my teammates from Liquigas, who'd been spat out the back. He came back and said, bloody hell, Wurf, everyone was cursing you. You're back first race, and they all knew it was you on the front, causing chaos at kilometre 0. No one attacks at kilometre 0. So, I thought that was the best way to come back in. I didn't want any free kicks. I didn't want any, ease back in. It's okay, you haven't raced for a long time. I wanted to come back in and show everyone I'm pretty good at the sport I'm doing now, and I can hold my own with you, that was great, and I was back.
That's huge. I remember your Instagram post announcing that you were joining the Ineos Grenadiers, and I think I double read it because I was like, really? Wow, that's I guess lots of endurance athletes, triathletes harbour this. Could they be a professional cyclist and an Ironman triathlete? And here you were, really, from my knowledge, having been around the sport my whole life, perhaps the first, really, to do it at that level. I think you are the first, Cam Wurf.
Yeah, I am. Even the whole rowing to cycling thing. You've had Drew Ginn, had a bit of a go, and, James Bond, Hamish Bond, both guys that have achieved a hell of a lot more than I will ever achieve in rowing, but for whatever reason couldn't quite crack that. And then now we've got another guy, Jason Osborne, a young German guy. He stayed with Quickstep last year now. I don't think they didn't sign him as yet, but they might. He's trying to make the transition. I'm doing everything I can to help him with that. What advice I can give him. It's funny because people don't understand the intricacies of the peloton. It's not as easy as, you got a big engine, you're going to be fine. For example, if you just hit your brakes, the thing is at the highest level, we're going so much faster. So that means you come into a corner so much faster. So we're harder on the brakes, so we slow down and then we bang out. And if you're even harder on the brakes because you're a bit nervous and you're chasing all of a sudden to get back in the wheels every corner, it doesn't matter how strong you are. When it comes to the crunch time, you're just going to get spat out the back, from guys that are efficient with it. You watch a Sagan or an Alaphilippe or a Pidcock now, Wout van Aert, Van der Poel, these guys, they just sail around the group, through the group. They're just, not that they're not also phenomenally strong, but they're also how to save their energy. It's quite incredible. And that's the thing that, people from other sports probably don't pick up on, and I don't know how I picked up on it because I certainly didn't have a cycling background racing wise. I was just fortunate enough to I have some. I remember Cadell telling me, you can never be too far forward in the bunch. It's probably best not to be on the front. It's always best to get a bit of protection, but it's much easier to be at the front and drift back than be back trying to get to the front. And if you watch the way he raced, he was very rarely ever too far back. So, and then I think after 6 years, stepping out of the world tour, everyone says, oh, you go out for a year and that's it, you never come back. I think, well, why not? I mean, you see guys, leave the AFL or leave the NRL or, obviously NBA or NFL, other big professional sports. And when they come back, they don't go back and play minor leagues. Otherwise, there'd be no point coming back. And in my case, I was never wanting to come back to cycling. I happily left the sport behind. The only reason I would ever come back to cycling was because I'd be with this team, which is the best team in the world, with a bunch of guys I was spending a lot of time training with and really enjoying being around, and had all expressed that, God, it'd be great to have you back on the team at some point, And so, for me, that was natural. I knew I was good enough to race at that level. So I didn't really see that it was a big deal. But, I understand why it's a bit odd, because no one's ever done it before.
Yeah.
But hopefully, that's a good thing. Hopefully maybe it, inspires other guys that if they do want to take a break and step away and whatever, it's fine to come back if you want to. It's not easy, I definitely noticed that first race, even though I was on the front foot early in the race, I definitely noticed not long after that how much I'd lost. But, and I had to work pretty hard through last year to get that back. But I've certainly felt pretty comfortable this year, and I'm never the first guy dropped in a race.
Today's episode is lovingly brought to you by Polar's world-leading GPS multi-sport and running watches and their heart rate monitors. Coming from the heart of the Nordics and with over 40 years of proven performance, Polar believe it all starts with the heart. Their products simply give you the most accurate way to plan, train and recover. Polar's Precision Prime heart rate technology is the most accurate way to plan and track your activity and recovery 24/7, 365. Born in the Nordics to beautiful designs, their watches are built to withstand the toughest conditions and make sure you've got a stunning watch for any occasion. Polar Training Load Insights allow you to explore the limits of your body so you can find out if you are training just right to improve your performance and reduce injury. And with Nightly Recharge, you can truly understand and predict your recovery so that you can not only own the night but win the day. If you feel like it's time to beat your best, jump across to Shop Polar on polar.com to check out their all-new range. Support for today's show also comes from the team at Amp Human and Momentous, building the future of human performance. Amp Human are the creators of PR Lotion, a lotion designed to maximize your training and recovery by unlocking bicarb, a natural electrolyte that improves muscle function and helps you combat fatigue during hard workouts. Amp Human's PR Lotion is used by some of the planet's hottest endurance athletes, including Team Ineos Grenadiers, Cam Wurf, today's featured performer of course, and Tour de France champion Geraint Thomas. Train, compete, repeat with Amp Human's PR Lotion. As a special offer for the Physical Performance Show, the team at Momentous are offering 25% off your purchase of Amp Human's PR Lotion by jumping over to bikeexchange.com and using the coupon code TPPS25, all capitals TPPS25 at checkout. For now, let's jump back with this week's featured performer, Ironman champion, Ineos Grenadier professional cyclist, Cam Wurf.
Cam, you've had some great success since you've been a Grenadier with some World Tour victories for the team. What would you say has been your highlight back on the bike at a professional level? You've done a lot. Obviously last year there was quite a few seconds. This year the wins, Dylan Van Baal winning the classic. That was great, because that was probably the only classic I felt like I really contributed. The rest was a bit of a baptism of fire, learning, because I'd never done those races before and was sort of learning my way through them. And that one, we were pumped for it. We knew Dylan was up for it. He felt really confident. He'd been working his way through. And I remember on the new climb one, so not the cobbled one, the road climb into where the cobbled section start. We were controlling the race, and sure enough, Van der Poel did his normal, 100k out for the finish attack. And I went after him, and it felt good. We had a bit of a group, of course. It ended up sort of getting shut down, but
then I was at the front and I was able to control the front of the peloton and keep Dylan at the front, because one of his biggest issues in the previous races was he was getting too far caught behind. He had to work his way through the field all the time, and we felt if we could make sure he was at the front, then he'd be very hard to stop if he attacked. And yeah, sure enough, then we hit sort of the next cobbled sector, around 60, 70K to go. And yeah, he formed a bit of a selection, and then he attacked them on the next one and rode solo for the last 50K to win. So that was exciting because I really actually felt like I was a part of it. But yeah, Tom Pidcock, being there for his first win, as a pro, that was really special. And then, Ethan Hayter, I've done quite a few races with him, and I call him the rough diamond. Pidcock's the diamond and Ethan's the rough diamond. I think everyone's going to hear a lot more about Ethan Hayter, in the future, in the coming years. And so it was great with him too. But probably the highlight was definitely the Vuelta last year with Richard Carapaz. And, we had quite an eclectic group, Carapaz, Andre Amador, Ivan Sosa, Froome, myself, Polish guy, Mikael Golas was there, Dylan Bearbal, and we had Brandon Rivera one. He was only there a day though. So we lost Golas after a week. His wife got COVID, he had to go home. So we're down to 6. Jumbo Visma, they lost Dumoulin early, so they were down to 7. It was just back and forth. I don't know if you followed the race, but there was never more than seconds between, bonus seconds between Roglic and obviously Carapaz the whole time. And they swapped the lead, 3 or 4 times during the race. I remember the first day he took the jersey, we were, it was a horrible day, and we were climbing up this climb, and everyone was sort of adjusting, putting jackets on and gloves and whatever for the descent. It was going to be freezing. And I was trying to put my jacket on. I'm not very competent with that sort of thing in the wet. And as I was drifting back through the group, I saw Roglic struggling with his gloves. And I was thinking, he's not going to get them on. And so I just dropped my jacket on the ground, raced back to the front. So I'm just in the jersey, and said to Carapaz and Amador, I said, let's go. And Golas was there too. And we just smacked it through over the top of the climb, through this tunnel, came out the other side. I was full gas, and we hit the other side, roaring rain. It was probably, I don't know, it was got to be minus degrees. It was freezing. I instantly froze, and off they went. And I'm drifting back through the field in my jersey. It just got hypothermia, like shaky like this. And it would have been 3 or 4 minutes before I saw Roglic, and I was like, sorry, mate. Anyway, he got down. They dragged him back. His whole team came back for him. I stayed with him. I was on the radio telling our director, Roglic dropped. And they said they were sitting in the car, and they're thinking, how would Cameron know that? It was on a climb. He wouldn't be at the front. He wouldn't know where Roglic is. And then they caught us first, and they're like, wow, Roglic is right there with you. Anyway, they did. They got him back on. But then just as they got him back on, Carapaz attacked and, of course, took the jersey. And moments like that, just like those spur-of-the-moment decisions, stuff I never thought I'd get a chance to do again, and stuff that I'd watched and seen opportunistic moves. And that guy's so bloody good. It's really hard to find a way to shake him, And anyway, yeah, it was just a great battle, every day, crosswinds, sections, and, getting to climbs. And, I love the Vuelta. And I think that we realised that my running program, so the schedule we do, it's basically a 6-day cycle, and have a day off each week. And the Vuelta was they dropped a few stages, so we're down to 18 days, so it was 6 days, one off. I really didn't, as the race went on, I got further and further, I felt like more of a bit of a boss. I definitely felt a lot fresher compared to a lot of guys, and I think it was because I was very much used to that, kind of intensity, hard intensity, day in, day out for 6 days straight. And then you could recover on a day and go at it again. And so I definitely felt like, because everyone was quite shocked at how well I handled a Grand Tour. I said, well, I think that's because of my running. So it's good that training for triathlon has definitely helped my return to the World Tour in some ways.
I mean, a question that comes up for you all the time is, how do you juggle both? I mean, the running workloads, running is unforgiving in terms of the loads, the demands on the body. I know for a period there you were running up to 100-kilometre weeks and you dropped off your cycling to do that. Is it a give and take type approach, Cam, or how do you sort of structure that out?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, obviously last year I didn't have to worry because there was no, or 2 years ago, 2020, there was no races, so nothing happened. So I could, even though I was always ready to go for a triathlon should something have happened, as in more ready to be able to do some training to go to a triathlon. I didn't obviously really have to do it. But this year, obviously there's definitely some give and take. And I guess it was the first time where I could prove that I could do both sports at the highest level, and early in the year, I'd raced quite a bit. I didn't do a lot of training. I tried to do a couple of races. First one was a bit of a disaster, more from a nutritional standpoint. I just had forgotten about when you got a team car behind you and people handing you bottles all the time, you kind of forget about the self-reliance stuff. And I fell apart pretty badly in the first race I did. But then the second 1.5 in Andorra was, a little bit better. I'd had a chance to do a little bit more training and then obviously I then went away. I did a stage race after that. It was actually, quite a good one. And then I came back. I had 4 or 5 weeks before it was Copenhagen. And Copenhagen was never a plan, but that was sort of, I had that 4 or 5 weeks free to do some training as the first block to build up to Kona. And the night guys were a bit concerned that, I was actually at quite a high level and felt that I needed to take a break because they were worried about me sort of pushing a bit too hard a bit early, and it sort of suggested I take a 10-day break. And then I was meant to do a few bike races and then do the final build to Kona. And I said, well, I don't want to just take a break. I knew there was either Frankfurt one weekend or Copenhagen the next weekend. I kind of looked at the field, and I saw Lionel was racing in Copenhagen. I felt, well, Lionel's always a good benchmark. He's always pretty solid. And so I'll go there and, see where I'm at. And obviously, I was pretty comfortable there. So it gave us a lot of optimism that we're on the right track for Kona. But, in that case, I'd had a good block of racing, so I was nice and fit. And then I was able to push myself pretty hard in my running and swimming for that period to really get into good triathlon shape. And then fast forward to, obviously Kona got scrapped. I went back on the road. I did a bunch of bike races towards the end of the year. And then there was Mallorca, and that was the week after my last bike race of the year. And Tim Kerrison felt, well, right, this is a great opportunity to really prove you can do both at the same time, with a very short turnaround. And it was interesting because I was definitely incredibly fit. And in the swim, I had an incredible swim. At one point, I'd lost the front group, which was, Florian Angart and a few others. I bridged to it on the first lap, but I was completely blew up like a cheap watch. I hung on. It was an Aussie exit halfway through. I hung on till about 100 metres before the beach, and I thought, right, I'll just back it off here and I'll catch them on the beach. I'm an Aussie, so I'm good at this part. I couldn't stand up. I was so exhausted after 2K of the swim just because I was so fit and just thought that I could just go, but it just completely destroyed me. And then obviously the second group, the main group, I spent the whole next 2K on my own. They caught me just as I got out of the water. And then, I was just pretty flat the whole day. I was just, honestly, I was struggling to run up the beach after the swim and got on the bike and had to try and gather myself and get myself into the race, and obviously got to the front and, had a couple of guys with me and wanted to drop them, but I was a bit afraid to push too hard, thinking I'd blow up myself. So I kind of just had to sort of manage all that and see, hopefully pray that I'd have some incredible run. And in the end, I didn't have a great run, but I was able to sort of gut it out and get third. But, I think what it taught me was during that bike racing block, I tried to keep up with my running. And the first couple of races, I really felt that on the bike. And so we sort of tried to cut that back then and try and get a bit more into the pool. But then it became difficult just with COVID restrictions, etc. But I probably learned that during a racing block, racing on the bike, the most important thing is my swimming, because if I just had a bit more technical proficiency, like good feel for the water with that fitness, I probably would have had an incredible swim, which would have set me up for the bike just nicely. And then I still ran a 2:53 or something, which isn't sort of far off my best. And I think if I'd had that freshness, going onto the run, I still could have put together a really good race. So yeah, I learned a hell of a lot. And But that field in Mallorca, you know, I mean, that was a field that if you weren't on your game, they was going to pay for it. And sure, you know, you look at the guys, okay, the guys ahead of me, but the guys behind me, you know, you got Bart Arnott's, you got Mickey Weiss, you got, you know, a bunch of other guys that have been contenders in Kona, and obviously Bart on the podium, and very good guys that were behind me. So, you know, I think I can honestly say that I'm doing both sports at a pretty high level. So that's good. But obviously the next step is to try and always be at the top of both.
And Cam, I think people that follow your journey will be enthusiastic about the gains you've made with your run leg. I recall watching you run to victory in 2019 Ironman Italy just several weeks before you went to Kona for your fifth place there that year, 2019. You dropped the 2:45 off the bike. What you talk about your team, working with Nike. What do you think are the top three things that have made the biggest difference to your running these last several years?
Well, for starters, consistency, you know, in 2019 particularly, and even last year for blocks, and then of course this year for blocks, that the consistent, you know, week of work, you know, of good volume. And for me, that number seems to be around 100, 120K a week. And then the other, you know, I guess probably one of the big things I learned, you know, from what I've learned through Elliot, you know, we have the same sort of, you know, group that Nike that work with us, is that not to overdo it. You know, it's always, yeah, if you feel good, don't try and do more that day. Just bottle that and make sure you turn up the next day and do a good job, because there'll be a day where it's a bit tough and you need to save that bit for when you get that tough day. Because if you keep on trying to push a bit more and push a bit, yeah, that's when you really become susceptible to injury. And the key to being, you know, maintaining a high level is obviously consistency and being consistent with your work. And, you know, if you look at the races now that over the past two seasons, 19, 21, that I've actually targeted and trained for, I've been very, you know, relatively consistent, you know, that mid to high 240, 250 range, you know, even with good or bad, you know, days. That's probably the big one. You know, I think a lot of people focus, I mean, I don't know, I do only know from what I do, but certainly there's no, you know, crazy focus on crazy speed. I mean, you know, the fastest you know, guys, okay, now they're running 2:35, but even that, you know, it's what, 3:40, 3:45 pace, something like that, you know, running, I don't do any stuff running 3 minutes or 2:50 or 2:45 or anything. I mean, again, that opens you up to injury. I'm not saying that we mightn't do that at some point, but you know, it certainly hasn't been discussed that it's something where we're working towards. And also from what I hear, the way Elliot trains, he runs at 2:50 for a marathon. So of course he does a lot of work at that pace, but it's not like he runs 2:20 or anything. You know, understanding the type of effort that you're working towards. And I guess for us, of course, an Ironman run is quite a bit slower. So, you know, maybe a top speed working off what you think maybe a flat marathon time might be. So of course for me, you know, we think potentially that's around 2:30 somewhere, you know, maybe on a good day in the 20s, somewhere high 20s. So that sort of pace is sort of as quick as, you know, I'll go in training. Yeah, I think that's the key. It's consistency, you know, being able to put the weeks and weeks of work together back to back to back. You know, for us, we found it's sort of 4 to 6 weeks, you know, in blocks throughout the year, and just keeping it that, you know, just sort of tapping on the ceiling, but not smashing through it. You know, for the distance stuff, you know, for the type of running that is required in our sport, and or for me anyway. And that's been that'd be the three big things. And then, yeah, not going crazy with the speed and exposing yourself to, you know, the potential injury, because that's obviously always the biggest risk with running.
You're listening to Cam Wurf, Ironman Triathlon Champion and Team Ineos Grenadier professional cyclist on this Featured Performer episode. Support for today's show also comes from long-term show partner Precision Fuel and Hydration, who have a range of tools and products to help you personalize your fueling and hydration strategy so you can perform at your best. Long-term listeners of the show know them as Precision Hydration, but they've changed their name to reflect the fact that they've been helping athletes nail both aspects of their performance for a long time now. Everyone sweats differently, and the amount of fuel we require varies also, depending on factors like the duration and intensity of our activity. So a one-size-fits-all approach to fueling and hydration just doesn't cut it. Head to precisionfuelandhydration.com, take their free online sweat test and the quick carb calculator to understand your fluid, electrolyte and carbohydrate needs during training and racing. Also book a free one-to-one video consultation with the team to refine your hydration and fueling strategy for your next race. As a listener of the show, you can get 15% off your first order of fueling and hydration products by using the code TPPS22, that's capital TPPS22 at the checkout at precisionfuelandhydration.com. For now, let's jump back with this week's featured performer, Team Ineos Grenadiers cycling professional and Ironman Triathlon champion, Cam Wurf.
Cam, where do you think your genes come from, these endurance genes of yours?
I was actually just at dinner and people were talking about that. My dad, he was very good sport. He actually was a great runner at school. He ended up leaving home when he was quite young, 14, went to the army, and ended up being a fisherman. That's when he moved to Tassie, and met my mum through that, and they had me. But he, at the time, he would beat Rob De Castella. Smash him, he said. By accounts from his friends that I've met, wow. he was really top notch and potentially could have been one of the best runners that the country had, and had life not dealt him the cards they did when he was younger. But he was a great athlete, and at that point I think De Castella went to Xavier College on a scholarship. He said something like he went to one of the big schools. And Dad obviously left home, went to the army. But he's certainly been. I remember when I had a rowing machine. We had two. And he'd do the sessions with me, and he'd always sort of say he'd never asked me to do something he wouldn't do himself. I moved back and was living with him when I went to high school, and moved back to Tassie, and so he took me to the gym. He used to. He made me, he said, I know you want to have a beach body like all your mates, but I'm going to teach you to be strong. So he used to make me do, each body part so I'd go 5 days in a different body part each day. And I never got big, I did get quite strong, but I was always quite, I guess lean, but pretty strong for my size. And I think that's been the big thing. The tendonitis in my wrist has really been my only injury I've ever had. Apart from a broken a couple of bones, but certainly no wear and tear ever, which has been pretty amazing. And when I tell, coaches and certainly when I did my screening with the night guys and talked about my background, they felt that background as a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid is something that built you a nice foundation to ensure that you didn't, you could handle stuff as you got older and prevented injury. So. Yeah, he was an abalone diver, amazing set of lungs. He still holds the record for the number of fish. I think he caught 300 ton, in a year, and he did that in 300 days. So, think about a ton a day of abalone. It's quite a lot. So yeah, he was certainly a bit of a beast of a human, and I guess that's where his work ethic and his endurance and I guess stubbornness just to work hard. Probably where I got that from.
Cam, is your father still alive, still with you?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's she lives up in Noosa on the Sunshine Coast. Haven't seen him for a couple of years, but he's still there, and he's well into the cycling now. He's obviously got a couple of nice Pinarellos and cruises around with his mates. And I think whenever he does the local grand fondos and whatever, he's certainly at the pointy end of his age group and probably a couple below him. So he's a good athlete, that's for sure.
He's the envy of the local chain gang with the latest Pinarello equipment. Cam, there's a few listener questions that have come through. One's from Tom, Tom Cal. Tom asks, what does Cam rate as his best ever performance in his life? Big question.
That's a tricky one. Yeah, it is. It's easy when everything goes well. When everything goes perfectly. And I've had a number of wins in all sports. But I guess Kona in 19 stands out because that was a really tough day. I didn't have a good swim. I was, I think the whole Italy thing, I don't think it was so much Italy. I think, it was probably started with Italy, the travel. We got it all a bit wrong. The time zone, all of that, how you handle that yourself. And, I was pretty flat, didn't have a good swim. The bike really wasn't going how I planned. It was a bit like Mallorca. I kind of wanted to drop everyone, but I was also afraid I'd blow myself up and had to back myself for the run. And then I was right in that mixing pot in the run where at any moment, if your head fell off, you could easily end up 20th or, I could stay in the fight for the top 5. And, and I think, I've always felt that I need to be good enough to win Kona on my worst day. And I wasn't good enough to win it that day, but, I was good enough to be in the top 5. And, Mike Riley, I was mighty opportunistic that I'd never spoken to Mike before, and I saw him a couple of days before. He said, they've got everyone been following me, and everyone's really excited to see what I can do, and see if someone can finally take it to the Germans. And I was obviously really flattered by that. But he said, just remember this. He said, there's going to be so much out of your control out there on Saturday, but the one thing you can control is your attitude. And I just remember thinking, in the swim, and then thinking, no, just stay here. You're just going to have to figure it out. Get out of the water, get into the race, see what happens. Same on the bike. I felt like I was going to blow up a few times and just hang in there. And sure enough, finally, one by one, they started dropping off. And and the run, same thing. Lionel and Alistair came charging past me, and Sebi, and it's like, just be calm, just run your pace, and slowly but surely work my way back through. And I think that day was, just on a personal level, even though it wasn't so successful, it was, considering how everything went, I was quite happy with myself on that day that I was able to save some face.
Joe Coombe, a very passionate, recreationally competitive triathlete from Australia, based in Noosa actually, asks, big fan of yours, if Cam was Lionel Sanders' coach, what would he have him do differently? And obviously this is a bit of an ongoing joke in the triathlon world. Yeah,
like I said, lead by example. I said that to him. I said, mate, I'll just show you what to do, and just try and keep up, and got him back on track, didn't it? But, in all honesty, I'm a huge fan of Lionel. Everyone in the sport's a huge fan of Lionel. He wears his heart on his sleeve and love that. But one thing I've said to Lionel, he hates it when I say this, is, he's got to understand that everyone trains hard. I think he has this conception that he works harder than everyone else. He suffers more than everyone else. He does all this, he does it tougher than everyone else. So it's like, mate, everyone's tough at this level. Everyone works hard at this level. Otherwise, you're not here. If you're banking on being that, you're probably worrying too much about the wrong thing. Just focus on, working your ass off and doing your thing and go and race. And that. And I've said that to him a number of times. And I don't know if he listens.
Well, it's part of the brand, isn't it? Lionel Sanders' brand. Cam, a couple of quick rapid fire questions in the performance round. Here we go. Training session most disliked.
Oh gosh. Man, honestly, I love training. I love exercise. I love getting out and going training every single day. I guess I hate days off. I hate the off season.
There's your answer. Training session. Flipping that, training session most loved.
Yeah, I guess a good. The adventures, the things that stand out for me are like the adventures that, particularly like Richie Port and I, we did 400K one day on his birthday. Frumi and I, we rode all through, Tambourine and, up to the border and back. And we finished at, is it Binnaburra? And did and we got off and we actually ran up in the forest there, did like a 21K loop one day, swam at the waterfalls during that. And, another time we rode from Châtel back to Monaco. So in the Alps back to Monaco, but the first night we just rode and finished on top of the Grenadier. It was like 250K. And I remember doing the first 200K on the TT bike and Froomey being just in bits. And then, we had to go up to Galibier and I was way better shape than him, and I'll never forget that. And, but yeah, I think those, and then Richie Port and I doing the Madone. But yeah, I think those adventure days, the days that are, obviously it's a crazy training session, but it doesn't feel like that because it's an adventure, and it's something I wrote down a bunch of things in my book. I know this isn't rapid fire, but I wrote down a bunch of notes in my book on the flight over, and one of the things that I wrote down for this year is embrace the adventures more, and not going on the old cuckoo side of loving the experience and all of that stuff, but just not being afraid to go out there and do something a bit crazy, training session wise, not being too protected. That's the thing about, I learned with Froomey particularly, they don't wrap him up in cotton wool. It's they definitely, I remember one day we rode to Byron Bay. We went via Nimbin. We actually met Tim Reed in Nimbin. That was quite an eye-opener. But got there, went for a swim with the sharks, and just those sort of things for me are the things that I can't wait to get out of bed for in the morning when I know we've got something like that on.
Anyone that's passionate about their training can resonate with those adventure days. That's brilliant, Cam.
Yep.
Pre-race meal, have you dialed in what you ingest before you take to a stage of a Grand Tour or an Ironman, or what's the go there, Cam?
No, I seem to have something different. I'm very territorial with the way I eat. I guess when I'm in the US, I seem to have an oatmeal. They're big on their, they call it oatmeal, we call it porridge, but in Australia, I grew up on banana and sugar, or banana and honey on toast. So I remember having that before Port Macquarie. In Italy, I remember, I went down for breakfast and all they had was pasta and rice. So, okay, pasta. I had rice with a bit of milk and honey. And in Copenhagen, I think I had carrot cake for breakfast because I couldn't really find anything else I really wanted. So, I haven't really dialed it in, just sort of what's there, what I feel for. I mean, the reality is the meals in the day, the couple of days before are the most important, particularly 2 days, probably 2 days before, the dinner 2 days out, lunch, dinner that night, are probably the most important to fuel the tank. In the morning, it's just placebo, make yourself feel good. And, I don't stress too much about that. Just make sure I'm happy and at least mentally think that I've got a full tank, and that's the most important thing. Worry about the rest once you get on the course.
Some good insights there though, Cam. Who's the athlete Cam Wurf most admires and why?
Tom Brady, for sure. Tom Brady. Yeah, we share the same birthday, 3rd of August.
Oh, there you go.
Obviously, he's quite a bit older than me, but no. So I think that, and Nike are kind of pushing me to sort of go try and stay and keep improving for as long as possible. And, watching what he's done, is pretty phenomenal, and certainly gives you, even though it's a completely different sport, but any sport, to be the best at any sport is not easy. It doesn't matter what the sport is, and I think sharing the same birthday and what he's achieving at, 44, 45 years of age is extremely motivational to give me the belief that, my best days are still ahead. Tom Brady, he's my man, TB.
Brilliant. Cam, toughest competitor you've ever raced against, who'd that be and why? Tough question.
I guess, the thing is in triathlon, I haven't really, I haven't really had close battles. I've either won or lost. I've raced so many people over the years. But in cycling, Roglic is a real pain in the ass. Like, he's good. He's a tough bastard. He's really hard to beat. You rock up even more than, Pogacar, of course, but I haven't actually raced against him. And when I have, he hasn't actually generally been at his best in winning. But, whenever I've been at those bigger races and Roglic has been there, oh man, he's just so good. He has an intimidation about him. You just know you're in for a real fight if you want to beat the guy, and his team, his team really rally around him, and you're just fighting with him all day. Like so going up against those guys is obviously you're always in for a fight when you're there. And quick step the same. But in triathlon, I'd love to have, I'd love to just win by a long way, to be honest. but I wouldn't be upset if I ended up with a rivalry with one of the with the top guys, and we had some big battles in the future. And we'll see what happens in the next couple of years. We come out of COVID.
Watch this space, Cam. Best recovery tip.
I mean, a bit of a sponsor plug, but Amp Human, the cream. It's momentous now, but the PR lotion. I mean, the biggest thing, before an Ironman, I use it obviously all over my body, and the legs and whatever. I mean, I know it makes a big difference, but the big one I notice is where I know it works, genuinely know it works, is I thought, so my mate Jimmy Johnson, he's a NASCAR driver, one of the best ever, 7-time champion. Now he's racing Indy cars. I gave some to him, and he had his Masseur before the race, rub it all over his body, because car in the NASCAR, they're like, driving an old an old WBU, with the 308 in it, and he just whole body hurts after a race. So he used this cream, and he said the next day I met him the next morning. It was a race in California. We went for a run on Muscle Beach down in Santa Monica. It was like 5 a.m. He said, "Mate, I cannot believe how good I feel." It was the first time he'd been racing 20 years, and he's normally his inside butt cheek, because they're on the angle, just excruciating. He said he couldn't feel a thing. Anyway, that was must have been 2018. And I thought about it. I was like, damn, the one thing that hurts me the most after a triathlon, that you expect the body parts, the legs, arms, etc., is my neck from being in the TT position. So I started putting that cream on my neck. I never get a sore neck anymore. Never. I wake up the next day, because what it does is it lowers the pH of the muscle. So it just, lowers that acidity and toxicity in the muscle. So even like a static motion, like driving a race car, or another mate of mine, Cal Crutchlow, MotoGP guy, rider, he uses it all over his body, said the same thing. That for me is the best tip I've got. I'm sorry it's a sponsor plug, because they're definitely one of my sponsors, but yeah, I think if anyone knows me, they know me pretty well. I only work with products and companies that I genuinely believe in, and that's definitely one of them. So poor form prevention cream, I like to call that stuff. Yeah.
Poor form prevention cream. Brilliant. Cam, final few questions here in the physical performance round. One word to describe your racing style.
All in.
Cam, how would you describe being in the zone?
Oh, you just think clearly. You just what's going on around you. I remember, in Kona in 2018 when I had a really good swim, and I remember being able to see. I could tell who everyone was around me. I could see. I remember Tim Reed, actually. I think I followed him in the swim. And I saw Patrick not far away, and I knew where everyone was. I remember same thing in Italy that year. In 19, just having complete awareness of what was going on there, and in quite a chaotic situation. And then in Copenhagen, on the run this year, I remember I didn't not one cup did I drop on the ground. I put everything I took in the bin. I was always alert to where the rubbish bins were, and it's why I knew I was just in complete control of what I was doing. And gels, nothing went on the ground that day. I would run just up the road, drop it in. I never missed a shot. And, so that for me is just when you're just extremely calm and completely aware of, the brain's working. I mean, that's one of your biggest muscles that, so it takes a huge amount of fuel. That's when you've got everything just really dialed, when that's just nice and clear, you make the right decision. Yeah,
wow, that's insightful, Cam. And final question in the performance round. You may have touched on it already with that epic 400K ride, for example, with Richie Port, but toughest session you've ever done. We know that epic sessions don't make champions, but still fun question.
I think actually this year before Copenhagen, I did a day where I rode back from Barcelona back to Andorra, and it was 45 degrees. It was so hot that your bottle hurt to hold. And and it was like 8 hours in the saddle, and then I got home, and it was obviously a bit of a mess. I'd been a mess pretty much the whole ride, and I went up to my gym and did 10K on the treadmill as well. Just probably that's fresh in my mind, that one anyway. Much takes the cake of being the toughest, the most uncomfortable I feel like I've been for quite a period of time.
Brilliant. Cam, you're out of the performance round. Final two questions. If you could boil everything you've learnt and are learning still into one piece of advice to help listeners of this show perform at their physical best, what would Cam Wurf's single piece of advice be?
Again, if you haven't done the work in training, don't expect to do it on race day. I think that we all think that, we can, do blocks and build up and then it'll all just come together. But, the reality is, and I'm not saying to go out and do an Ironman on a Sunday, a couple of weeks before you do your Ironman, but make sure you can swim 3.8K comfortably. Make sure you can ride your bike 180K comfortably. And be confident that, worst case scenario, you can walk a marathon. But that's probably the only one that you can maybe just fudge a little bit as far as your preparation goes, if you're content with taking as long as you need to take. But, if you're going to look at an Ironman, for example, but any sport, just make sure you can go the distance and then I guess work on how you're going to put them all together. I'd at least think about trying to put the swim and the bike together, one day before you go and do a triathlon. But just remember that. And again, the run, you don't have to go and run a marathon, but I would recommend you running for, staying on your feet for 2 or 3 hours or so at some point, just so your body knows what that's going to feel like. It's just all about getting the most out of yourself on race day. At the end of the day, you've often done weeks or months or years of preparation, so you may as well get the most out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about that preparation. And Cam, finally, every guest of the physical performance show issues the listeners with a physical challenge for the week. So I'm very curious, what is Cam Wurf's physical challenge going to be?
Do I have to do it as well?
Let's say yes.
Well, I swam 10K the other day for the first time ever. It was something I'd been afraid of. Probably should have said what I was afraid of. That's something I've been putting off for about 4 years now. But I got in the pool yesterday actually, and swam 10K. So it took me 2 hours, nearly 2 hours 40. But no fins.
Got it.
Definitely no fins. My wife said if you're going to do it, you can swim it. But it was actually an amazing challenge for me, because I actually got in the pool and I didn't feel great. And I was thinking, gosh, I'm actually feeling a bit heavy here. I mean, I need to figure out how to do this efficiently. Otherwise, I don't think I'm going to make it. And as I got in, it was probably, even after 6K, I started to feel, like I was swimming better. And then when I finished, I couldn't actually believe my time. I had a few breaks here and there, have some drinks, etc. But the speed, for me was quite quick. I'm unfortunately much better at swimming in the ocean than I am. It taught me that that importance of awareness, body position and, floating, for example, and not slowing yourself down. It was actually an incredible exercise for me personally. And I'm really glad I did it. Yeah, maybe not 10K, but maybe just do your longest swim you've ever done. How about we do that? Longest swim you've ever done.
That's great. And you must tag Cam in if you complete the challenge at CJ Wurf over on Instagram, and the show at Physical Performance Show. Cam, lots coming up for 2022. You recently published a great blog recapping on your 2021 season over on your Instagram gallery link. So I'd encourage people to jump over there and read along on your reflections. But what are the goals for 2022? Coming in hot once again at Ineos Grenadier, and potentially to what about with Hawaii / Ironman Triathlon World Champs? Yeah,
well, first I've got to qualify for Hawaii. That's probably the biggest goal. I could potentially do that in St. George, I guess, but we'll see. With the team, until sort of, I guess, the end of August, I'm really sort of committed to being available for when they need me. So when I can do an Ironman will be when, I get a runway to prepare. I mean, I've learned, as I said, a lot from last year as far as being able to balance both. I'm not afraid to maybe do an Ironman the weekend after racing on the bike, but I'd obviously need to make sure I got the work done I felt I needed to in those, few weeks before that. So, first part of the year will simply be about qualifying for Kona and wherever that is, that'll be. And then, I'd obviously love to be a part of as many wins as possible with the team. That definitely motivates me like nothing else to go out and win myself. So that's the big one. And then, obviously the dream is Kona. So, first, you can only chase one rabbit at a time. So we'll worry about qualifying and then go from there.
Well, Cam, I know you've got a huge legion of fans following your journey. You're one of the endurance sports, despite your own reflections in your blog, most accomplished characters, but also one of the most entertaining and lighthearted, but obviously still there to get a job done type of guys. So, mate, thank you for stopping by the Physical Performance Show. The years have been worth the wait.
Pleasure. And, hopefully maybe next time when we catch up, we'll have a bit more to discuss and maybe some more to celebrate. It'd be great.
Some hardware for that enlarging pool room of yours, Cam.
My wife only lets me have the first place trophies in the lounge room on the mantelpiece. So as I said to you before, happy wife, happy life. So she's a huge supporter of mine.
Absolutely, the team behind the athlete, mate. Thank you once again. You've been very generous with your time.
Pleasure. Anytime.
So there you have it, 2022's first featured performer, and what a way to kick it off with Cam Wurf. Now, if you're not already compelled to jump over and follow Cam's journey on social, what a cracking journey it is, then do yourself a favour. You'll find Cam easily over on Instagram at CJWurf, WURF. Whilst there, check out the show at Physical Performance Show and pop a podsy of this episode or any of the episodes from our archives that you're enjoying. Tag us in at Physical Performance Show. Now, the show's over on YouTube to search the Physical Performance Show, and there you'll enjoy video episodes of our guests, including key learning snippets from our guests' share-ins. If you'd like to support production of the show, you can do so from just $5 per month over on Patreon. Jump over to physicalperformanceshow.com, our brand new website. There you'll find the link. Whilst there, also subscribe to the Physical Performance Show's weekly newsletter. And a big thanks to new show patron Salim Savic for your support. Massive thanks as always to the great folk who make this show possible each and every week. Daryl Misson, our audio engineer since episode 1. Likewise, Matt Olding, show graphic design, and Susan Wilkin, all things show administration. The team have been together since day one, and I am appreciative of their efforts and expertise. A massive thank you once again to today's show partners, Polar, Precision Fuel and Hydration, and the team at Live Momentous, creators of Amp Humans PR Lotion, who generously made today's recording possible. Now, coming up on next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, we bring you some learnings with repeat guests of the show, Simon Bartold and Paul Griffin of Bartold Clinical, who reveal the top 5 running shoe innovations over the past 20 years. Which running shoes make that coveted top 5 list? Now, the inclusions may surprise you. I suspect the top choice will. So until next week, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.